I knew something was wrong the moment his mother insisted on using the good dining room. No birthday, no anniversary, no holiday. Just the four of us. And a table set like a negotiation. She placed me directly across from his father, as if positioning mattered. My boyfriend sat beside me, unusually quiet, tapping his thumb against his knee. He does that when he's anxious, but he wouldn't look at me long enough for me to ask why. We made it through soup and small talk before the room shifted. His father straightened in his chair, cleared his throat, and slid a single envelope toward me. A white envelope, heavy. My fingers didn't move toward it. Something in my body already knew I wouldn't like what was inside. "We believe," he said, with a seriousness that didn't fit the moment, "that certain expectations should be clarified before you and our son move forward." Move forward. He said it like our relationship had been quietly absorbed into theirs. My boyfriend finally spoke, but not to me. "Dad," he said softly, almost pleading. His mother cut in before he could finish. "It's nothing dramatic," she assured, though the tremor in her smile said different. "Just structure." It wasn't until my boyfriend turned to me, eyes full of something like guilt or fear, that I opened the envelope. I remember the rustle of the paper more than the words. I remember my breath stalling. I remember thinking, so this is what it feels like to watch a future evaporate. His father kept talking, phrases like family alignment and long-term stability, but it all blurred. I couldn't hear anything except the pulse in my ears and the ringing clarity that came with it. When I finally looked at my boyfriend, really looked at him, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding for years. And that was the moment I pushed my chair back and told them the one thing none of them expected to hear from me. I walked out before anyone could stop me. Later, when he called me, voice strained and frantic, he kept begging me to come back. All I said was, "Ask your parents first." Because after what they handed me at that table, I needed to know whether he belonged to them or to himself. If you looked at us 2 years ago, you would have sworn we were the model couple. We met at a friend's birthday party, one of those crowded bar patios where music is too loud and conversations blur together. He wasn't the flashiest guy there, but he had this soft, steady way of listening that made you feel like the world quieted for a moment. I remember him offering me his jacket when I shivered, even though it was barely cold. I remember laughing at how he apologized 3 times for interrupting me, even though he never did. And I remember thinking, he's kind, he's safe, he's different. At the time, different felt like everything I needed. We fell into each other's lives easily. He'd bring me coffee before work, remember the exact way I liked it. I cooked for him every Sunday, and he'd insist on doing the dishes, joking that it made us balanced. He wasn't bold or unpredictable, qualities I once thought I craved. He was gentle, predictable, warm. He made me feel chosen. But looking back, the first red flag should have been how often his phone lit up with his mother's name, or the way he'd pause mid-sentence to answer her calls, no matter the hour, or the quiet tension in his shoulders whenever his father asked him about work, or savings, or long-term planning. I told myself it was cultural, or personality, or just a close-knit family. People always praise closeness until they see what closeness can become when boundaries don't exist. When we moved in together, I expected the calls to stop, or at least slow down. They didn't. If anything, they increased. Questions about our apartment, comments about the furniture I chose, suggestions about how we should arrange our schedule. "They're just trying to help," he'd say. "But we've got this," I'd reply. He'd smile, kiss my forehead, and then call his mother anyway. I didn't understand then that he wasn't consulting her. He was seeking permission. Still, it wasn't all bad. He was endlessly thoughtful, always remembering little details. The candle scent I liked, the snacks I craved during stressful weeks, the songs that calmed me down. He made me tea when I couldn't sleep. He held me when I cried over work. He told me he wanted a future with me. House, kids, everything. I believed him. I believed in him. Maybe I believed enough for both of us. There were moments, small ones, when I felt the edges of something I couldn't name. He'd hesitated before making even simple decisions, like which restaurant to try or which couch to buy. He'd say, "Let me just check something," and then step into the hallway with his phone. Whenever he returned, he'd act like nothing happened. I didn't press. Love makes excuses where logic shouldn't. His parents were always involved, but the involvement grew sharper, heavier, more intrusive over the years. I brushed off the discomfort because I loved him, because I wanted to build a life with him, because I thought independence was something he'd grow into. But what I didn't see then, what I couldn't see, was that his independence had never been allowed to exist in the first place. And I didn't understand what that meant for me, until the night they laid an envelope on the table and expected me to accept a future ruled by their terms. A future where I was never meant to be a partner, just an approved participant. Before everything fell apart, the tension didn't arrive in one dramatic moment. It seeped in quietly, like water under a door. You don't notice it at first. Then suddenly the floor is swollen, warped, and nothing sits right anymore. It began with little things. His mom would call while we were halfway through a movie. He'd pause it immediately, sometimes even stand up, to take her call in the hallway. We were right in the middle, I'd tease. He'd smile like he knew. It annoyed me, but couldn't help himself. She just needs a minute, he'd say, but it was never a minute. Or his dad asking him for weekly updates on his career, not friendly curiosity, performance evaluations. What's your plan for advancement? Are you saving enough? Have you reconsidered the project your supervisor assigned? I'd watch the confidence drain from his face during those calls. He'd nod and murmur, "Yes, Dad," like he was 16 again, not a grown man with a job and a home and a partner. Still, I tried to be understanding. A close family isn't a crime, but there's a difference between closeness and control. I just didn't know how big that difference really was. The first genuine crack appeared the day we were choosing furniture for our apartment. We'd found this beautiful emerald sofa, slightly bold, slightly unconventional, and for the first time, he seemed excited about something that wasn't pre-approved by someone else. "We look good on it," he laughed, stretching out on it dramatically. But then his phone buzzed. His mom. He stepped away to take the call. When he came back, his expression had changed, softened into something resigned. "Maybe we should get something more neutral," he said. "You love this one," I reminded him. He shrugged. "Mom thinks the color is too loud. She said it'll clash with everything." I remember staring at him, stunned that a couch could be vetoed from 30 miles away. But he looked so conflicted, so torn between what he wanted and what he was told to want, that I let it go. "That's fine," I said gently, even though it wasn't. The second crack came months later, during a conversation about vacations. We'd saved for a beach trip, our first one together in years. We were comparing flights when he said, "Actually, maybe we should hold off. My mom mentioned visiting her cousin that week." I tried to keep my voice neutral, "But we've been planning this since spring." He blinked like he genuinely hadn't considered that. I know. It's just family obligations." It wasn't the words that bothered me. It was the way he said obligations. Like his entire life was an appointment he couldn't reschedule. And somewhere in those months, the atmosphere between us shifted. Little frictions, little silences. I started noticing how he avoided making choices unless they came with parental guidance. How any suggestion I made, restaurant, movie, weekend plan, was met with, "Let me check something first," followed by a call or a text to his mother. I also started noticing something about myself, how small I felt in those moments, how invisible, how much space his parents filled in the room, even when they weren't physically there. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me with this quiet helplessness, like he knew I felt pushed aside but didn't know how to stop it. "I'm sorry," he whispered once. "For what?" I asked. He looked at the floor. "I don't know." That was the scariest part. He wasn't malicious. He was conditioned. And I loved him enough to ignore the early warnings, loved him enough to believe we could work through it, loved him enough to think that when things got serious, he would choose us. I didn't know yet that the veto envelope wasn't an out-of-nowhere ambush. It was the final shape of a pattern that had been forming for years. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The night of the dinner started beautifully, which somehow made everything worse. His mother opened the door wearing an apron embroidered with tiny lilies, her hair styled like she was hosting a magazine photo shoot rather than an intimate family meal. The house smelled like garlic and roasted herbs. Classical music drifted softly from somewhere deeper inside. "You look lovely, dear," she said, kissing my cheek as if she'd chosen me herself. His father greeted me with a brisk nod, the same one he always used when he was about to evaluate something. Work, finances, a life choice that wasn't his to weigh. My boyfriend squeezed my hand as we stepped inside. "You okay?" he whispered. "Should I be?" I teased lightly. He didn't answer. The table was arranged with perfect symmetry, napkins folded into little fans, matching glasses, a roast that must have taken hours. It all felt rehearsed, not warm, not casual, but staged, purposeful. I didn't recognize the purpose until much later. We sat. His mother served the roast with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. His father waited until we were all mid-bite before clearing his throat, a sharp, practiced ahem that cut through the small talk. My boyfriend's fork paused midair. He lowered it slowly, and that was my first clue something was wrong. His father folded his hands. We need to talk about the future. My heartbeat quickened. The word future had always been a soft one between my boyfriend and me. Late-night whispers, shared dreams, lazy planning sessions about kids and vacations and houses. But his father said it like it was a problem. We've been thinking, his mother chimed in, smoothing her napkin, and it's time to formalize certain expectations before you two move forward. Formalize. Expectations. Before you move forward. Each word tightened my chest. Then his father reached under the table and placed a thick white envelope in front of me. He didn't explain it immediately. He just waited. My boyfriend stared at the envelope like it might explode. He didn't reach for my hand. Didn't say a word. Something in my stomach sank. I opened it. At first, it looked like a contract. Clean bullet points, bold headings, numbered rules. It was so absurdly official, I actually thought it was a joke. A terribly executed prank. But the more I read, the colder I felt. Family approval required for career changes, purchases over $5,000, relocation decisions, timing and number of children, educational decisions for said children, any major medical choices. Approval, not discussion, not input, approval. I heard myself exhale sharply. My head felt light, like the air had thinned. This can't be real, I finally said, my voice soft but trembling. His mother leaned in. It's very simple, sweetheart. We operate on family consensus. It keeps things harmonious. And what happens, I asked slowly, if I disagree with your consensus? That, his father replied evenly, is why veto power is necessary. My eyes snapped to my boyfriend. He looked at his lap, not at me. Are you hearing this? I whispered. He finally lifted his gaze. Yes, he said quietly. And they have a point. The room felt suddenly smaller, tighter, hotter. A point? I repeated. You think this is normal? He swallowed hard. They've always helped me make decisions. They've never steered me wrong. Helped, guided, steered. All words for controlled, but he didn't understand that yet. You asked your mother before taking your last job, I reminded him. She nearly talked you out of it. And she was right, he said defensively. I negotiated a better offer. She didn't negotiate it. You did, I snapped. And she doesn't even work in your industry. His father raised a hand, cutting the air. This is exactly the kind of emotional impulsivity that family oversight prevents. I felt the sting of that, being labeled impulsive for not wanting to surrender my autonomy. I pushed my chair back. The legs screeched against the polished floor. Where are you going? His mother asked sharply. I stood. You want veto power? Fine. My voice shook, but not from fear, from clarity. Veto this. I'm out. The silence was instant and suffocating. His father's mouth fell open. His mother's fork clattered against her plate. My boyfriend finally looked at me, really looked, and his face crumpled in shock. You're leaving? He whispered. You nodded, I said. You actually nodded. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I'm not signing up for a life where your parents get to approve my choices. I want a partner, not a committee. He stared helplessly, caught between two worlds he didn't know how to choose between. I didn't wait for him to try. I grabbed my purse, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. The last thing I heard before the door closed was his mother's voice, sharp with disbelief. She's making a mistake. Maybe. But it would be my mistake, and that was the entire point. I expected the aftermath to feel loud. Anger, shouting, frantic calls. Instead, the night was quiet. Too quiet. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, still wearing my coat, staring at nothing. My mind kept replaying the scene. The envelope, his parents' calm entitlement, his silence next to me. The way he nodded, not uncertain, not conflicted, but accepting. That was the part that wouldn't stop cutting. I kept waiting for the kind of angry sobbing you see in movies, but instead everything inside me felt muted. Not numb, just still. Still in the way a person becomes after realizing they've been fighting the wrong battle for years. At some point, my phone started ringing, then buzzing, message after message, his name lighting up over and over. But I couldn't make myself answer. What was I supposed to say? That I was hurt? He already knew. That I was shocked? He wasn't. That I wanted him to choose me? I shouldn't have to ask for something that basic. I turned my phone off. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that envelope. He showed up at my apartment the next morning before sunrise. The sound of my spare key turning in the lock pulled me awake. My heart lurched. I didn't even know he'd kept the spare until that moment. He stepped into the room slowly, as if approaching someone injured. "We need to talk," he said softly. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself. "Most people knock. You turned off your phone." "Yes," I said, "on purpose." He exhaled sharply, like I was already being unreasonable. "That's not how relationships work." I sat up straight. "Neither is your parents demanding veto power over my life." He flinched. There it was, the first crack in his calm. But instead of acknowledging it, he slipped into the same tone he used whenever he wanted to smooth over a disagreement. "They didn't mean it literally," he said. "You misunderstood. They just want to feel included." "Your dad printed a document," I said. "Your mom called it veto power. How much more literal does it get?" He rubbed his face with both hands, sitting at the edge of the bed like he'd carried the weight of the world overnight. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. They just care. They've always been involved. You know that." Involved is not the same as ruling our lives. He looked at me then, really looked, and for the first time I saw fear flicker behind his eyes. 4 years, okay, he said. "We've built something real. Don't throw it away over a miscommunication." "That wasn't a miscommunication. That was a boundary test." I swallowed hard. "And you passed it. For them." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "So you're just done?" he asked quietly. "Just like that?" My answer came out softer than I expected, almost gentle. "Unless something changes, yes." His face tightened. "What does that even mean? Something changes?" "It means you choosing us," I said. "It means you not looking at them every time you have to make a decision. It means you setting boundaries you should have set years ago." "They're my parents," he said, his voice rising for the first time. "You want me to cut them out?" "No," I said. "I want you to stop letting them speak for you." He stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. "You're giving me an ultimatum." "I'm giving you honesty," I said. "I won't marry into a situation where I have no autonomy. I can't build a life with someone who needs permission to live it." He stopped pacing, his shoulders slumped. "I need time," he whispered. "Take it," I said. "But take it for yourself, not because they told you to." He nodded mechanically, looking everywhere but at me. Then he grabbed his jacket and walked out, leaving the door half open behind him. I closed it myself. Later that day, I texted him, "We need space while you figure things out." He didn't respond, but silence for the first time in our relationship felt like clarity. The shock was beginning to fade. What remained was something quieter, a growing recognition that the life I had imagined wasn't real, not because he didn't love me, but because he didn't know where he ended and his parents began. And when a man doesn't know where he ends, he can't make room for someone else to begin. By Monday morning, the space I thought would help us both breathe had already turned into something else, an opening his parents were all too eager to step into. He stopped texting. I stopped reaching out. And in the silence between us, something cold and inevitable began to form. I didn't expect the next blow to happen at work. Around lunchtime, my receptionist buzzed my office. "There's a gentleman here for you," she said. "He says he's your father-in-law?" I felt the breath leave my chest. "I'm not married," I said automatically. "Oh, I must have misunderstood. He's waiting in the lobby." I knew exactly who it was. I walked downstairs, the fluorescent lights humming above me, and there he stood, rigid posture, tailored suit, expression carved from granite. He didn't even offer a greeting. "You humiliated my family," he said the moment we stepped outside. "My wife, my son, humiliated." I crossed my arms. "I declined something unacceptable. That's not humiliation. That's self-respect." He laughed, short and sharp. "My son comes from stability, planning, expectations, and you walked out like a dramatic child." "And you," I said quietly, "presented me with a document outlining control over my future." His jaw flexed. "We offered guidance, structure, resources. Do you have any idea what you're rejecting? Opportunities most people pray for." "I'm rejecting a leash," I said, "even if it's gold-plated." He stepped closer. "You think you can build a life without us? On your income? With your career?" I swallowed, heat rising in my cheeks. "I'd rather build something imperfect that's mine." For the first time, he looked genuinely stunned. Then his voice dropped to a low warning. "When you're alone in 5 years, remember this moment." I met his eyes without blinking. When your son turns 50 and still can't choose a job or a home without asking your permission, remember this moment too. He had no comeback. He just turned and walked away, shoulders tense, as if the world itself had disobeyed him. But the escalation didn't stop there. 2 days later, I opened my apartment door to find his sister carrying a box out of the hallway. My boyfriend stood behind her, packing silently, his shoulders hunched like he was bracing for impact. "Oh," I said, "you're moving out." He didn't answer right away. His sister did. Obviously. He finally murmured, "My parents think it's best." There was that phrase again. His parents think. I stepped aside. "Do you need help?" His sister scoffed. "Wow, she doesn't even care." I ignored her. My eyes stayed on him. "This wasn't your idea," I said softly. He shook his head, eyes glistening. I just need time." "Take all the time you need," I said, "but make sure it's your time, not theirs." He flinched like I'd hit him. They spent 2 hours packing. I helped with the heavier boxes because he looked too hollow to carry them himself. Every time our fingers brushed, he tensed, as if reaching for me would break something permanently. When they finally reached the doorway, he turned to me, eyes red. "I still love you," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but love without freedom isn't partnership. And I won't disappear to make you comfortable." He didn't argue, he just walked away. I changed the locks that night, not out of fear, but because I needed the psychological boundary he could never make for himself. Later, my phone rang. His mother. "You've destroyed her," she snapped before I even said hello. "She can't eat. She can't sleep. Are you proud of yourself?" "I'm not responsible for her reactions to her own choices," I said. "Choices?" She practically spat the word. "She tried to include you in the family." "Include?" I echoed. "Your family doesn't include people. It absorbs them." She gasped loudly. "Do you know how many women would do anything to marry into a family with our resources? Do you know how many women would run in the opposite direction from a family that needs veto power to feel important?" Her voice went shrill. "I have never been spoken to like this." "Then welcome to something new," I said. "Growth is uncomfortable." She hung up violently. But the escalation wasn't over yet, because that night her brother called me. The only one who always seemed to see reality instead of the fantasy his parents curated. "I'm sorry," he said, "about everything. The dinner, the document, the pressure." "You don't have to apologize for them." "I do." He sighed. "My sister grew up as the golden child. She never had to make real decisions. They made them for her, and she never pushed back." "That's not reassuring," I admitted softly. "You were the first thing she chose. The first major part of her life they didn't orchestrate. That made you dangerous." "Dangerous?" I repeated. "To their control," he said, "not to her." I pressed a hand to my forehead. It made too much sense. The envelope, the meeting, the rules, they weren't sudden. They were the culmination of years of conditioning, a system that expected obedience and saw independence as rebellion. That night, sitting alone on my couch with only the soft hum of the refrigerator for company, something inside me shifted. I no longer felt like I'd lost someone. I felt like I had stepped out of something. Not a relationship, a structure, a hierarchy, a quiet, suffocating cage that I hadn't fully seen until the door swung open. And even though my heart ached, even though my eyes burned, I felt a strength settling in my chest. Because at least now, for the first time in 4 years, my life was entirely my own. The days that followed were strangely quiet. The kind of quiet that creeps into your bones. The kind that makes you aware of every small sound. The hum of the refrigerator, the click of the heater turning on, the distant traffic outside your window. Grief doesn't always announce itself with sobbing or dramatic collapses. Sometimes it arrives like this. A stillness that sits beside you on the couch and refuses to move. I went to work. I came home. I made dinners I barely tasted. I crawled into bed early, just to shorten the days. A few people noticed the shift in me. My coworkers asked gentle questions. Friends sent texts like, "Everything okay?" I answered politely, vaguely, because I didn't have the emotional energy to unpack what had happened. What would I even say? My boyfriend didn't lose me. He released me to his parents without a fight. Nothing about that sentence felt real yet. The truth is, I missed him. I missed the version of him I knew in the beginning. The man who'd bring me coffee, who'd kiss my shoulder in the mornings, who made space on his bookshelf for my favorite novels. I missed his laugh, the way he'd squeeze my hand twice, like it was a code for "I'm here." And the worst part? I missed the future I thought we were building. The one I rehearsed silently during long commutes or boring meetings. A home, maybe children, weekend trips, growing older beside someone who felt safe. I didn't just lose him, I lost that imagined life. And that kind of grief is its own kind of heartbreak. But there was another ache too, sharper, more humiliating. It came from replaying the dinner scene in my mind over and over, searching for the exact moment he chose their comfort over my dignity. Was it when the envelope was placed on the table? Was it when he said they had a point? Was it after I stood up and declared I was leaving? No, it was long before that. It was in the years I dismissed small discomforts as no big deal. In every moment, he said, "Let me check something first," before making a simple choice. In every call he took from his mother mid-conversation. In every time he told me, they just want what's best. I had mistaken compliance for kindness. I had mistaken dependency for devotion. That realization burned. One night, a few days after the move out, I found myself sitting on the floor of my living room with a blanket wrapped around me like armor. I had planned to fold laundry. Instead, I stared at the heap of clothes and cried quietly, tears that came more from exhaustion than tragedy. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for myself, for the version of me who had tried so hard to make this work, for the woman who kept giving grace to someone who couldn't stand on his own, for the love I gave so freely to a man who had never learned how to protect it. At some point, I whispered into the empty room, I deserved better. And hearing myself say it cracked something open. I thought the dark moment would be the breakup itself, but the real darkness was this, facing the possibility that I had spent 4 years loving someone who was never truly available to love me back, not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how. That's a painful truth, a lonely truth, an ugly truth, but it's also the truth that begins to set you free. The next morning, I woke up feeling hollow, but also anchored, like the grief was settling into a place where it could no longer swallow me whole. I saw my reflection in the bathroom mirror, puffy eyes, messy hair, and instead of pity, I felt a flicker of strength. Not loud, not triumphant, but steady. Maybe I wasn't okay yet, maybe I wouldn't be for a while. But I wasn't broken, not completely, not irreparably, and somewhere in that quiet recognition, something inside me shifted again. The woman who walked away from that dinner table was stunned, shaken, hurt. The woman standing in my bathroom now, she was beginning to understand her worth. The darkness was still there, but it wasn't drowning me anymore. It was simply showing me where I needed more light. The turning point didn't come from some dramatic confrontation or a sudden surge of courage. It arrived quietly, tucked inside a phone call I didn't expect. It was his brother. He'd always been the only grounded one in that family, the one who could laugh at their mother's theatrics, the one who moved 3 states away the moment he turned 21 and never looked back. I answered his call because he was the only person from that world whose voice didn't make my stomach tighten. "I heard what happened," he said, skipping niceties. His tone wasn't judgmental, it wasn't pitying, it was honest. "You don't need to apologize for them," I said softly. "I'm not apologizing for them," he replied. "I'm apologizing for my sister." That made my breath catch. No one had said it so plainly. "She's never had to make her own choices," he continued. "They did everything for her, planned her classes, her jobs, her vacations. Hell, they practically chose her friends." "I know they were involved," I said, "but I didn't understand how much. They raised her to need them, and they like it that way. Parents like ours don't want their kids to grow up. They want them obedient." His words were sharp, but not cruel, just painfully true. "She told me," he continued, "that you were the first thing she chose for herself, and that terrified them more than anything." It hit me then, why the envelope wasn't as shocking to them as it was to me. Why he nodded. Why they thought veto power was reasonable. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. "You broke the pattern," he said. "Not by what you did, by what you represented. Independence. Autonomy. A life that didn't require their input." For a moment, all I could do was breathe. He was right. Not because I wanted to be rebellious or disruptive, but because choosing someone outside their system meant she was growing into her own person. And they couldn't allow that. "Look," he added, voice softening, "I'm not calling to drag her. I'm calling because you deserve to know you weren't imagining things." It felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize had gone stale. We talked a few more minutes, but the truth had already landed inside me, anchoring itself. I did not cause this. I did not destroy anything. I simply refused to participate in something that had been broken long before I arrived. After we hung up, I sat on the couch, staring at the patterns of light on the wall, letting the clarity settle. Then the doorbell rang. I assumed it was a package. It wasn't. It was his parents. They stood on my doorstep dressed like they were attending a formal meeting, her in a pressed blouse, him in a blazer. Their posture told me everything I needed to know. They weren't here to make peace. They were here to regain control. "May we come in?" his mother asked. "No," I said politely. "We can talk here." His father's jaw twitched, but he nodded. "Our daughter is miserable," his mother began. "She isn't sleeping. She can't focus at work. She barely eats. This needs to stop." "What needs to stop?" I asked calmly. "You need to come back," she said, as if it were obvious. "Reconsider. Work within the family structure." I raised an eyebrow. "Family structure?" His father stepped forward. "Name your price." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "Everyone has one," he said. "A number, a condition. What will it take for you to return and accept the way our family operates? A larger apartment? A better job? Financial support?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so profoundly disconnected from reality. "You think I left because I wanted more from you?" I said. "No, I left because I wanted less." His mother stiffened. "This isn't a game." "It's not," I agreed. "This is my life, my future, my choices, and none of you get to own that." "You're making a mistake," his father snapped. "No," I replied softly. "I made a mistake for 4 years, but I'm correcting it now." They stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language, as if the idea of a woman not bending to their hierarchy simply didn't compute. His mother's voice thinned with contempt. "You will end up alone." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll be free." She gasped. He turned red, and for the first time, I saw them not as authority figures, but as people trapped in the very system they tried to pass down. They left in a huff, coats swishing dramatically, their indignation trailing behind them like perfume. I closed the door, leaned my back against it, and exhaled. That was my turning point. Not the dinner, not the breakup, not the tears or silence after. This moment where I chose myself out loud and without apology. I realized then that I wasn't just walking away from him. I was walking away from a life where my voice would always be overridden by someone else's. And for the first time, the path ahead didn't feel empty. It felt possible. Fallout doesn't always come fast. Sometimes it spreads slowly, moving through a family like a hairline cracking glass, starting invisible, then branching and fracturing until the whole surface is compromised. In their case, it took less than 3 weeks. It began with his brother's wedding. A moment that should have been joyful, uncomplicated, surrounded by laughter and love. Instead, it became the stage where their family finally revealed itself to everyone else. I wasn't there, of course, but I didn't need to be. His brother called me the next morning, his voice a mix of disbelief and resignation. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "I probably will," I replied. He told me how the ceremony went beautifully, how guests were smiling, how his new wife looked radiant. But at the reception, his parents decided, without warning, to take the microphone. They started giving a speech about family unity, he said, and decision-making, and how children should follow the guidance of their elders if they want successful marriages. I closed my eyes. "Oh, no." "Oh, yes," he said darkly. My wife's entire family just stared. You could feel the discomfort. Then came the twist. When I asked them to sit down, he continued, they refused. Refused. At their own son's wedding. "They said they weren't done," he said. "So I told them they could either sit or leave." And they left, made a huge scene in the parking lot. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He sighed heavily. "You were the one who saw it clearly first," he said. "I didn't want to admit it, but this is who they are." It wasn't vindication I felt. It was confirmation, relief, sadness even. Because for years I'd tried so hard to see the good in them. His mother's doting affection, his father's structured wisdom. It took stepping outside the system to see it for what it really was. Control wrapped in concern, manipulation disguised as family values. His brother wasn't the only one who saw it. Word spread quickly through their extended family. Cousins whispered. Aunts murmured about boundaries. Old friends revisited memories with new clarity. People had always known something was off. They just didn't have a name for it until now. His sister, the one who helped him move out of my apartment, called him after the wedding. I didn't hear the conversation, of course, but later I heard from his brother that she'd broken down crying. Asked herself, for the first time ever, whether she was making decisions because she wanted them or because she was terrified to disappoint their parents. Even in their dysfunction, the ripple effect created little pockets of awakening. But the biggest shift came from the person I expected least, my ex. One evening, about a month after the breakup, my phone screen lit up with his name. I almost didn't answer, almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, curiosity, maybe compassion, made me swipe to accept. His voice was surprisingly quiet. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. The words tumbled out awkwardly. like he still wasn't sure he had permission to say them. I sat up straighter. Really? Twice a week, he added. My brother recommended someone who specializes in enmeshment. He said the word carefully, like it was foreign. How's it going? I asked. He let out a shaky laugh. Terrible and enlightening. Apparently those two things go together. I didn't rush him, didn't rescue him from the silence. This part had to be his. I'm starting to see things I never questioned before, he said. Things about my childhood, my parents, myself, us. I swallowed softly. That's good. It's hard, but it's good. I know it's too late, he said quickly. I'm not calling to fix anything. I needed to apologize, for real. Not to get you back, not to soothe my guilt, just because you deserve to hear it. My chest tightened, not with hope, but with closure. You were right, he continued, about everything, and it scares me how long it took for me to see it. There was a time when I would have given anything to hear those words. Now, they felt like soft wind passing by, acknowledged, but no longer needed. It's not too late for your life, I said gently. Only for us. He exhaled shakily. I know. We talked a little longer. Nothing romantic, nothing suggestive, just two people honoring the truth between them. When we hung up, I realized something quietly powerful. I wasn't angry anymore, not resentful, not heartbroken, just free. Free in a way I hadn't felt in years. Free in a way you don't realize you aren't until you finally step outside the structure that confined you. A few days later, I ran into his mother at the grocery store. Pure coincidence. She spotted me near the frozen aisle, her lips thinned. I hope you're satisfied, she said. You've destroyed our family. I met her eyes, steady, calm, unflinching. Your family destroyed itself, I said softly. I just stopped participating. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no words came out. She turned sharply and walked away, muttering as if the world itself had wronged her. I stood there, next to the freezers, humming quietly, feeling something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not triumph, not vengeance, just a gentle, grounded peace that filled all the spaces where fear used to live. Their fallout was theirs. Their chaos was theirs. Their dysfunction was theirs. And none of it belonged to me anymore. It's strange how quiet life becomes when you finally step out of a storm you didn't realize you were standing in. The first few weeks after everything settled felt almost unreal. Moving through my apartment, my routines, my days, without the constant background noise of someone else's expectations humming under my skin. For the first time in years, I didn't have to brace myself every time my phone buzzed. I didn't have to wonder whether a decision I made, big or small, would ripple through a household that wasn't mine. I didn't have to negotiate my autonomy to maintain peace. I woke up when I wanted to, went to sleep when I felt tired, cooked meals that tasted like comfort instead of compromise. It was quiet, yes, sometimes lonely, but the loneliness felt honest. Not the kind that comes from being unseen in a relationship, but the kind that comes from clearing space for something better. Healing wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grand revelation or a sudden transformation. It was small moments, slow mornings, warm sunlight on my face, the soft certainty that my life belonged to me again. And sometimes the world had a sense of humor, like when I paid for groceries one Sunday morning and caught myself smiling at the absurdity of it. No one was going to question my purchases. No one was going to approve or disapprove. No one was going to ask why I chose one thing over another. Freedom, it turns out, lives in the tiniest details. I often think about my ex, not with longing, but with compassion. He wasn't my enemy. He was a man raised in a system that taught him obedience was love, that control was stability, that autonomy was selfish. He didn't betray me maliciously. He simply couldn't step outside the boundaries his parents built for him. I hope he learns how. I hope therapy gives him the tools he never had. I hope he one day chooses a life that is his, not inherited. As for me, I didn't walk away because I stopped loving him. I walked away because I finally started loving myself. And if there's one thing I want anyone listening to take away from my story, it's this. Love should never require you to shrink. Family should never be a cage disguised as support. And partnership should never feel like asking permission to be who you already are. The end of that relationship wasn't my failure. It was my turning point, my beginning. And the peace I carry now, quiet, steady, earned, is a reminder that sometimes losing someone isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's how you finally return to your own,